Hello everybody, welcome back. I'm the Strategy Professor, and today we're going to be talking about the 8.14 patch notes. So you can find timestamps in the description if you want to jump around to your favorite parts. Just like last time, I'm going to go ahead and just skip the Google Doc here. I did read ahead on the patch notes, but I think the patch notes themselves already are a pretty good visual aid to sort of express what's going on. So we're just going to skip the Google Doc on this one in the interest of trying to make this a little bit faster, a little bit more palatable. There are quite a few changes on this patch. Although I don't think it's going to be as meta-shaking, we'll see, as some of the changes in the past have been. But let's go ahead and get in here. If you enjoy videos like this, don't forget to like and subscribe. I know sometimes it can be annoying to sign into your Google account to leave that like, but it really does help out a lot. It helps other people find the content for that true insight, cutting through all the BS, all the all-caps videos, and giving you the real information that you need to make good decisions in League of Legends. So a lot of people would be interested in that kind of content, I think. So help them find it. Leave a like, subscribe. Just takes a couple of clicks. Okay, let's go ahead and get in here. Alright, so they are nerfing Aatrox. Now, remember, they hot buffed Aatrox like 12 times. If we look, let me just go back here just real quickly. Patch notes, 8.13 notes. Now, this is on EU West. Like, these patch notes just came out while I was walking my daughter around the block, like maybe 30 minutes ago. And so I read them over while I was walking her in the stroller and sort of formulated some of my thoughts about it. But remember that Aatrox has been buffed several times. So he was buffed here 3 times on his Q length. Then he was hot buffed here numerous times. So his ult got buffed. Everything about his entire kit pretty much got buffed. So he was very weak on release, but then he got buffed a lot. And so I think a lot of people would argue he's one of the best champions in the game as of, after his hot fixes on patch 8.13. So let's see what they're doing to him here. Okay, you get some kind of aesthetic stuff, whatever. They're lowering his base damage a little bit in lane. So they're knocking out 10 base damage on it. That's probably okay. The ratios are still the same. It does less damage to minions, so you have a little bit less wave clear early on, although later it's not going to matter as much, so you deal 15 less damage to minions. 15% less damage to minions, so his wave clear is going to be hit a little bit. So this is this, nerfs his laning phase. He doesn't have as many E's, so he doesn't have as much mobility early on, although he has more E's later on as the game unfolds. And then they're buffing his R scaling off of total attack damage, so he's going to be doing more damage later on, especially if you get more AD in your build. Now it says Q's recast timer is frozen while reviving, so I think that means that if he uses a Q and then gets killed and revives, he can still use the rest of his Q. It doesn't fall off. So that's actually a huge buff for him being able to wake up off of his revive and do more stuff off of his Q if he's already started it when he dies. So I think that's pretty interesting. And then these were already implemented. So they did keep the cooldown on his ult lower. I think that's one of the biggest changes that they made to buff him to where it's 140 seconds instead of 160, because he really needs that for his kit to function properly, I think. So I like that decision. I think this is a good start. I think he'll still be on the strong side. They did take off 30 off of his base stats too. So I think he'll be maybe a little bit weaker dueling in lane. So we'll see. I mean, I'm not exactly sure, like, his specific matchups, like, how does he fare into, like, Irelia or Darius or whatever. I haven't played that matchup from either side very much, but from what I can see, he's not that oppressive in most elos in the laning phase. I mean, maybe at, like, pro-level play. I think that his real strength is in kind of that mid-game. After he gets an item or two, he's very difficult to kill and take down, and he puts out a lot of damage. So I think that is still intact. It's just his laning phase. Definitely got smacked a little bit. But I expect him to still be pretty strong, a pretty high viable pick. Now, this might matter more than I think it does, but it definitely brings him down probably from, like, super overpowered to just being, like, a strong pick. So we'll see. I think you can still pick him if you've been practicing him. Alright, Fizz. Now, this is an interesting change. I was trying to see, like, what those numbers actually show up as on but it's not updated on the wiki yet, so it's hard for me to visualize, like, how these numbers are changing around a lot. But this seems like they're running the risk of bringing back Tank Fizz, which was really toxic back in, like, Season 4 or something, I believe. Season 4, Season 5. So he had really high base damage on his W, and so they wanted to turn him into like force him to get more AP, and then they added this into his kit, and they were trying this with a bunch of assassins that they've reworked. They did this on LeBlanc too, and I think they've reverted that as well. But like basically you have to stop part of your combo for like 2 seconds just to give time for counterplay, and then you kill them. So like with LeBlanc, you had to let your Q charge up on the target and then explode it after that, and on Fizz you had to let your W charge up and then hit them with the empowered W. You had to let your your bleed charge up, then hit them with the empowered W for the triple damage. So it had like these like strange moments of where you go in to assassinate, but you have to kind of wait around a little bit for them to do whatever counterplay they're going to do, and then you finish them off with the huge burst. So I think it was a good idea to try to mitigate just that one-shot 100-0 that feels really bad if you're not on the giving end of that. Like, obviously, if you 100-0 somebody, that can be fun, but if you're the person getting deleted with no counterplay, that's not a lot of fun either. So they're just trying to make him a little bit more of a damage over time. So that's what they say, is they say it's unsatisfying, having to wait. So they're saying the damage is a bit more front-loaded, but still does damage over time. We'll see. So basically what they're doing is the empowered attack damage. Now, there are 3 different parts to W, so it's kind of confusing. There is the damage over time portion, and then there is a bonus damage that you do, and then there is sort of the triple damage component that you do. So like right now, this is old Fizz. If you wait at least 2 seconds, then you get triple damage, so it's 180 base with 120% AP ratio. And then you have the bleed damage is 60 with 40%. So if you do all of that correctly, then you end up with 160% ratio with a 240 base. That's pretty nice. Then you get auto attack reset, and you get some mana back to help you out a little bit with wave clear, whatever. Okay, so they are increasing. I'm looking at the bleed. Okay, the passive bleed is the same. So that's 20 to 60 over 3 seconds. Okay, so that's exactly the same. The W's bleed no longer applies if you use your Q, and it doesn't apply if you use Chum the Waters, which is a pretty big hit to his damage output, honestly, at least a little bit. Especially with that Q passive. You're missing out on some damage. But let's see. Damage buff on non-kill. So now you get, instead of getting triple damage, the cooldown's lower, so you can spam it more. The empowered attack damage goes to 80. So that is when you press it. Your next damage is empowered. Okay. So that's the same. Or that's new. So that goes to 80. But instead of getting the triple damage, you get an extra 30 on-hit damage with a 0.3 over 5 seconds. So you hit him with the empowered. That does a little bit more upfront damage. And then you have a damage, an on-hit damage with a 0.3 over time. So the 0.4 is still the same. The empowered here is a 0.4, so that's a 0.8. And then it's 0.3 every time you auto. And this was a burst 1.6. So you would have to hit them 3 times. You have to auto attack them 3 times to get the same AP ratio at least. Now the raw damage is 240. So let's see. So you hit them with this. That's 80. Passive bleed. That's 140. So we're needing to get to 240. It's 30 per hit. So that's what? 170, 200, 230. So basically, you need to auto attack them like 3 or 4 times, from what I'm reading here, to get the same damage. We'll say basically 3 times, because it does reset the bleed every time you auto attack them. So basically, you need to get 3 autos to get what you could have had before. That seems like a huge nerf, right? So this, like, you have to wait 2 seconds, and then you can deal that triple damage, and you could start this process with your fish. So if you hit them with your fish, and then you go in, off of your trident, you land on them, auto attack, and then reset your auto. That was usually 2 seconds because it's fish. Okay, you go in, up on the trident, land, auto, reset, auto. And by the time you reset that auto, it was going to be more than 2 seconds. So that gave you the huge burst because your fish started the process. And if you queued through them, then you could auto and just kind of walk around them for a little bit. So you could queue through them, auto, go up on your trident to avoid their counterplay. And then as soon as you land, you could, empower W and triple hit them if you didn't have your fish up. So I feel like that is a faster upfront burst. Like, yeah, it feels bad to wait 2 seconds, but it feels even worse to have to actually auto-attack 3 times as an assassin before you get similar damage. So maybe it's not bringing back Tank Fizz, it's just straight up less damage. A lot less damage. Now, it is up more often. So, like, maybe that's... You could say, well, maybe that's enough for, like, Tank Fizz. But I just don't think it's gonna... I think the items in the meta just changed too much to make that work properly. So, anyways, yeah, I think that's a pretty big nerf. I mean, I hate playing against Fizz. I think he's very frustrating to play against, but there are a lot of other assassins that are like Talon that are super frustrating to play against too when they're really far ahead. LeBlanc. So, I mean, hopefully they revisit those if they're going to revisit Fizz like this. So, I don't know. I guess I don't mind slowing down his damage. I mean, I don't like getting one-shotted off of one item that he gets, but this is a lot of text for basically just like big nerf to Fizz. So yeah, it's looking bad if you like Fizz, I think. I mean, maybe I'm misunderstanding something in there, but it looks like 3 auto attacks is the minimum to break even with what you used to be able to do, which is 1 auto attack after waiting 2 seconds. Okay. Extra base health on Jinx. I mean, this is nice. 50 extra health is definitely a thing, so that you don't get all in and burst out early, but I still think she's going to have a lot of problems. Just the itemization on crit 80 carries is still on the weak side. I've said, the biggest change they could make is just lower the crit by 5 and then lower the casting, or lower the gold cost by 200 on the items. That way you're lowering the power down a little bit. It doesn't have the crit, as much of a crit power spike, but then the build path is a lot better. And it makes it a much cleaner for Infinity Edge. So instead of having 30% and then doubling it to 60%, you would have 25% doubles it to 50% crit. And if you have 2 crit items, you wouldn't go from 30 to 60 to 120 off of Infinity Edge, where it feels really bad because you're wasting 20% crit. Then you could just go 25 to 50 to 100, a clean 100% crit. So I think that's what they should do. Just lower the cost of all the crit items by 200 and then lower their critical strike chance by 5%. It's cost neutral. It still lowers their power, and it just feels a lot better to build into those items. But we'll see. I mean, there are some games where Jinx does okay, but I think that it's still really questionable. I don't think this is going to change a lot. I think it's helpful, but not going to change a ton. Okay, the Karma changes are kind of interesting in that they're giving her a lot more mana per 5. This is really good with Fairy Charms. So if you're going like, Ardent Censer first in the bot lane, or you want to go like Athenes or something like that, this is really, really nice. Extra 6 armor is a very big deal too. That's going to help her out a lot with trading in lane. Now, they're lowering the damage on her Mantrid Q early on. It's the same later, which doesn't matter. I mean, it kind of matters if you're maxing this in lane. This could be relevant as early as level 7, that you pretty much have the same damage. So you're losing 15 damage early on your Mantrid Q, but it's a lot easier to hit it. It has a larger radius. So overall, this is pretty good for Karma. I think she's still going to have a hard time into champions like, like Lulu or Nami. Nami specifically, and Nami's very popular right now. But I could see her being pretty good. I mean, a buff to Athenes a few patches ago is obviously really good for Karma. I don't remember if they lowered her shield. I think they did. With the most recent shield nerf, but I think that she could definitely, have a place. And she could get Zeke's if she had to early on, if you really wanted to, and you can use that a lot with your Soul Flare. The problem with like Karma is her CC is terrible for the most part. Like you just have a bind that takes a good chunk of time to activate, so it's kind of slow on assassins. And that's really the main thing, is she just doesn't have enough CC in the meta, I feel. But I mean, we'll see if people go for like bruiser tank type of stuff. Just having that mantraed E to run your whole team into the fight could be pretty helpful. And she obviously has a very good laning phase where she can push, you know, waves faster than almost any other support. Fast, efficient push and poke. So, you know, should be good if champion, like she'd be good with Heimerdinger bot lane. She could be pretty good with if Caitlyn comes back, or just like some other kind of poke champions. She could be decent, but I think her numbers are just a bit low after the nerfs the last year or so. I think that most of the time just playing something like Nami or Sona or Soraka would be similar. I mean, Soraka can wave clear pretty quickly too if you put a couple of points in your queue. She is safer than Soraka because she does get that move speed, and she can, you know, steal health with her W if she mantras her W. So it does make her surprisingly pretty resilient, but we'll see. I mean, the main thing they're worried about is they don't want her to be played in mid lane or top lane and be oppressive, because she does get picked there sometimes. So you have to be really careful when you're buffing support Karma. Like, buffing the mana regen is probably okay, because usually she's not going to get a lot of mana regen. She's going to get things like Luden's Echo, which doesn't scale off of your mana regen. So I think the mana regen buff's pretty safe. The armor buff's probably pretty safe. This is, like, okay. But it's just tough. It's kind of like Lulu and Karma are both very tough to buff. And they have to keep them in kind of this weakened support state and a lot of the time, because if they're good as support, then they could potentially be overpowered as mid lane if they get a lot of gold. So you could lower her ratios. That's one way to do it, is lower her AP ratios a lot and then increase her base, like her shield, a decent amount, because the shield is something that you don't get a lot in mid lane. So, if they want to buff her, I would say lower the ratio, lower her AP ratios, and then buff her shield up and lower the damage on her Q. I think that would be a good way to balance that out. Okay, Sion is still going to be pretty terrible top lane. I was never a huge believer in Sion, even when he was very popular top lane. They nerfed his E wave clear a lot, and that was his whole thing, was that he just had crazy wave clear with his EQ. And then he could just like get Banner of Command or whatever and just push waves. But I just think that it just doesn't work right now. There's just too many things that just crush tanks. They did nerf Conqueror on this patch. We'll talk about it in a little bit, but I don't think he's going to make a huge splash again. I think that was just a drop in the bucket there. Or a flash in the pan, maybe. Whatever expression it is. It was temporary a few patches ago. Okay, Twitch. This is actually pretty dangerous, because I think Twitch is actually quite good right now. I think he's very underplayed, but he can still go Blade the Ruined King and Hurricane, and if he gets those two items, it's off to the races. He's very, very strong. So yeah, Hurricane did get nerfed, by a few hundred gold, so that does slow him down a bit, but he is a very good Blade the Ruined King user, and he's one of the only 80 carries that really uses Blade the Ruined King early. That's popular. I mean, obviously you'd have Callista, who still has a lot of problems, and you have Draven, who's good early on, but he's someone who definitely can abuse that. And yeah, they buffed his poison, I think, like his AD ratio on his poison. So yeah, I think Twitch is potentially really strong right now, and a lot of people just aren't playing him enough. So I think that's really dangerous to give him an extra 40 health early. Okay, his mid updates. The Caitlyn thing is interesting. Plus 125% of your crit chance total damage. So I think they gave her extra scaling on the crit chance here. So if you have like 50% crit chance, you'd get extra damage on the headshot. Okay, yeah. So it gives you up to 100. So bigger headshots. Caitlyn is pretty good with Stormrazor. Like Stormrazor, Rapid Fire Cannon, people are figuring out that that's a pretty decent combo on Caitlyn. And Infinity Edge. We'll see. I mean, maybe Caitlyn makes a comeback. Like, I don't know. The game is slowing down a little bit so that she can actually... Because Caitlyn historically is really good, like, by herself in the laning phase just because of her range. And then, like, with a BF sword, she's very good. once she gets to Stormrazor, she's pretty good. But then she has a really rough mid-game. Because her attack speed scaling is so low and her abilities don't do very much damage. Like, her headshot is not some... Like, her ultimate, rather, is something that you don't really actively use in combat that much. It's kind of a dead thing unless somebody's running away. And obviously, like, her E and her traps... I mean, the headshot damage is nice, but if you don't have a lot of crit early on, then it feels bad. And, like, Stormrazor doesn't actually give you crit. It's just, like, your first hit crits, pretty much. So it doesn't affect your headshot. We'll see. I feel like champions like Jen are probably just going to be a little bit stronger in that circumstance. I'm looking at my daughter. She's making some noise. I think she's trying to go to sleep in the other room, but... Give me 1 second. I'm going to just put a blanket on her real quick. She might be cold. I'll be back in just 1 second. She looked kind of offended. And I walked in there, but she was kind of swarming around, seeming kind of cold. So we'll see if that helps her out. It's really hot out there. It's been like a heat wave around here. And we just went for a walk, like I said, while I was looking at these patch notes. And so I thought maybe she'd like to just kind of cool off. But it might have been a little too cold when she was taking a nap. So they hooked her up. Yeah, she seems a bit better. Okay, anyway, so this is interesting. I feel like she's not quite back yet. Maybe she's a bit more viable. I mean, what are her stats? People may not be building the correct items or whatever on her. I feel like she was, like, the lowest win rate 80 carry for a while. So I thought she was kind of in the dumpster. She's moved up. She was, like, 44%. Now she's 48%. So we'll see. I mean, the 80 carries, like, the crit ones are kind of creeping back up a little bit here. You know, Twitch is still strong. Jen's still pretty good. Jinx is, at least statistically, you know, winning some stuff. And then, like, Draven and Misfortune are both very strong. So 80 carries are very alive and well. And that's something that I've pointed out in several videos as well, is, like, if you look at the pick rate, like, 9 of the top 10 most picked champions are 80 carries. So it's not like 80 carries dead, you know, lol meme or whatever. It's just a bunch of people that just like to complain about stuff, I think, or just have a lot of misinformation. But anyway, so I think that she has potential if people go for Stormrazor Rapid Fire Cannon. And it's like there's a couple of other adjustments. She might be able to do it. So this helps a little bit, but I still think there are probably better choices. Now, Tristana got a couple of buffs, so her attack speed is stronger, her E cost is down, and they increased her bomb damage too. Not in the hotfix, but in the previous patch. So she got a few different buffs. So this allows her to trade more early on in lane, because it's only 50 instead of 70 cost, which is pretty nice, because it's hard to trade with her. When she throws that bomb on you, you kind of have to disengage, or you're going to take a lot of damage. She's potentially pretty strong right now. I mean, if she jumps on you with that W... especially, like, I had this happen to me. If she gets Stormrazor early on with that extra movement speed, when she, you know, jumps on you and then gets that Stormrazor, throws the bomb on you, and just attacks you with the Stormrazor a lot, like, it's really hard to get away from her. And if she gets a reset jump, you're definitely dead. So I think that Tristana potentially could be a lot better than people think right now. She can attack early, like, she does have short range, but she can all in. So if you put her with, like, a Leona or an Alistar or whatever, she can do a pretty good chunk of damage early on with the bomb and the jump, especially if she gets that reset. So keep an eye on Tristana. I think that... Where is she on this? She's still, like, in the 48% club down here. Yeah, she's around 48%. But just keep an eye on it. I think a lot of people have kind of given up, or they're building the wrong items on the crit 80 carries. Like, I think that the Stormrazor Rapid Fire is becoming... the thing. But keep an eye on it. We'll see. Okay, Varus, I don't think that's going to matter that much. Nocturne, I really didn't think this would matter that much with the Nocturne, but this turns out it's actually really hard to kill people And a lot of people are building, like, Blade of the Ruined King on him, and they're just going for, like, this late game, like, terrible build, I think. Like, just go Warrior Duskblade and go for the one-shot on the back line. I don't know, but maybe the all caps videos got to people. Is that something that people are doing now? So it's difficult to say because I haven't seen, like, good Nocturnes recently who get the appropriate build, the Duskblade Warrior. I've seen, like, this Blade of the Ruined King and then Stormrazor build all over the place whenever I see Nocturne. I'm not sure, like, which all-caps YouTuber is telling people to do that. But yeah, everybody that's, you know, playing for real is still getting Duskblade Warrior. So I don't know. That AD ratio does impact him for sure early on. And just some of the other mechanics to slow down the game impact him as well. But I still think he's probably a decent pick. I think that Taliyah is still really good. They did slow her. The biggest thing was her movement speed in the jungle early on. It's not as crazy. And like her Q cooldown is a lot more later on. It's an extra 2 seconds. So it does hurt her early jungle clear a little bit. But I think that she is still pretty good, especially because a lot of teams really need like an AP source of damage. Still, there's a lot of AD running around. So yeah, she's still really strong. She's played in a lot of different lanes, but at the top level has a high win rate. Yeah, I still think Electrocute. Yeah, she's still doing very well, especially in the jungle. So yeah, I mean, I think she's still great. I haven't seen her as much lately, but I think she can be really strong. Okay, Ahri. This is pretty good. I think that most Ahris, I'm pretty sure you max Q first. And I think that you max E last. It's either E second or third. So what that means is that this is really nice because for a lot of the game, this would only be 1 second. And now it's 1.4 seconds. That's a much longer CC. And it's a much lower mana cost. So that means that you can spam it more often. So I think this is pretty good. Do I think it's automatically going to make her like tier 1? Probably not, but I think that she's still just a good, like, stable pick. Like, she's not going to hard snowball a lot of games, but she can be pretty good. She can definitely, she's really safe. She's pretty easy to play, and she can be effective. So I think she's an okay, just sort of middle of the line champions. This definitely helps out with that. Cassiopeia, nice buff, ability power buff. This is once again what you typically will max second, so it's not your primary ability. Usually you max Twin Fangs first because that's what you can spam a lot. I don't expect to see her come back. She's not for a little bit, not in this meta. It just takes too long because she needs Rod and Tier, and that's just a bit too slow. If tanks come back, she'll come back, though. If you start seeing, you know, Mundo every game, and, like, we start seeing Olaf in the jungle, and, you know, Braum and all that kind of stuff, you'll start to see her come back if tanks come back. But right now, I think Assassins are just put a bit too much pressure on her early on. This Gatling gun is interesting. So you basically get more resistance shred, but this is, once again, not what you max. You know, you're going to max your Q on Corki. So they're, like, giving people these little buffs on, like, stuff that's not their main stuff. So they're trying to say, look, we don't want to buff, their philosophy seems to be, look, we don't want to buff their best stuff because we're afraid that might make them a little overpowered. So we're just going to buff them, like, these really fringe cases and, like, random stuff that they do. We're going to buff that a little bit. And that's kind of what they did with, like, Shyvana and Zac and these others. They just gave them AP ratios randomly and stuff like that instead of helping out, like, what they're... I think, personally, the balance should be, okay, what does this champion do really well? And let's really buff that hard and emphasize their unique identity. So what they do really well, and then if we need to nerf the periphery stuff, the extra stuff, then we can do that. And just make sure they do whatever their one thing is, that they do that well, so it gives them a unique identity, instead of trying to make them well-rounded. I think that trying to make champions well-rounded is kind of bad, because that means that, you know, generalist champions just are difficult to balance if they're good at everything, and it just doesn't give them a clear, like, strategic niche why you should pick them over other champions. right? So like Ahri is kind of like a good example of this, where she's kind of like okay at everything, right? Like she has okay wave clear, okay like mobility and roaming, like okay damage, but she just doesn't really excel at any specific thing, and that's why you just rarely see people pick her, because it's like, well, I guess I can pick her if I want to be safe and just like have a generalist stuff, but usually, you'd rather pick for a higher impact pick that's good in a specific situation. So I know it's like a tension balance wise. Like you don't want every champion to be super niche, so you can only play your favorite champion in certain, scenarios. You don't want like a paper rock scissors kind of game design all the time. But I just think that emphasizing their core identity more than sort of this extra stuff would be nice. So they are increasing the base damage early by a lot, though. I mean, 40 extra damage early. So like with Corki, for example, what I would want to emphasize about him is his rockets. The fact that he can spam these rockets over and over again, I think is cool. And just like his package play, I think is interesting. That you have like these certain windows of power where you can roam around and it's very telegraphed to the enemy, but yet it can still be high impact. I think stuff like that is what I would want to explore. But his ability to shred is interesting and unique for him if you want to make him like a utility shredder type of champion. So this is pretty nice early on. Now it does go to the same number late game, but this does make this a lot more useful as kind of a 1-point wonder. So if you only put 1 point in this early on, it is going to be a lot stronger. So we'll see. That is a lot more burst. I think there just needs to be a better mana item for mana casting AD carries. So like Sivir, Corki, stuff like that. Like Muramana works for Ezreal because like the on hit applies on his Q, but it doesn't really work that way with Corki. I think that would be very interesting if his rockets applied on hit. I'm not sure how you would balance that around, but that would be interesting if they decided to do something like that. And then Sivir sort of as well. If somehow like her stuff or like ricochets could apply on hit, they would have to be at a severely reduced rate or something, or it could be overpowered. I don't know. It's just interesting. Like the thing is that just like these mana users, Corki just really needs to be able to get a tier, and the item just doesn't work very well with him, I think. And the same is kind of true of Sivir. Essence Reaver is sort of a solution. That does give some mana back, but I don't know. We'll see. I don't expect to see... I mean, the bottom line is I don't expect to see Corki back a ton. I'm not sure. He was being picked middle for a while, and I don't fully understand why he fell out of mid lane. But he's abysmal. Like, there's nobody's picking him right now. I mean, I think a lot of it was he used to be able to go Trinity and then Infinity and just have, like, pretty good bursts, and people just haven't found, like, a good build for him after that. I mean, he needs help. So, this helps, but probably not enough. Elise, 7 extra health per level, whatever. Nasus, a little extra lifesteal is probably not going to matter. Slightly better jungle Pantheon, who cares? I mean, I don't know. Maybe it'll matter, but I think Pantheon needs a rework or some kind of help. He's way too linear. Like if he falls behind, he's just absolutely atrocious later on. I think they need to make where his drop comes in. That needs to be faster, and it needs to just be a higher impact. Like maybe when he lands on somebody, it slows them or something, or like increases their damage, or just like increases damage dealt to them, or just something. Just add something other than you do a little bit of damage and you jump on him. So we'll see. Rek'Sai, couple of damage changes. Maybe that's okay. I still don't think she's going to be back. Sivir. Now this is interesting because late game, this is going to give her, a lot more boomerangs, a lot more wave clear. Even early game, it's more poke. It's just like, Sivir's problem is she just runs out of mana so quickly. I think that her spell shield, like a big buff to her would be, if her spell shield blocks a spell, then its cooldown is reduced by 50%. I think that would be great. So if you're using it to accurately block spells, if they fake you out, it'd still have a long cooldown. But if you accurately block a spell with it, you would get the mana back, and then it would go on a much shorter cooldown. Then that way you could generate more mana and block more spells, and I think that would help out a ton. That would be the easiest thing. But otherwise, they need to like nerf her mana costs so that she can actually cast her spells. Because early on, it just you basically throw Boomerang on a wave, you spam your W on it, wave clear it. You do that twice, and you're basically out of mana. Extra AP ratio on Vel'Koz. This could be pretty dangerous. Vel'Koz is already, like, he's okay. He's not, like, insanely awesome, but, like, a good Vel'Koz can be pretty strong in the mid lane. So, pretty good. A little extra buff. I don't think it's going to change his position in the meta that much, but he's still a pretty... This will let him compete with something like maybe a Lux or a Xerath if you want a poke type of champion. Vayne, this is not going to matter. Vayne needs help in her early game. I don't know why they're helping out her late game. She's already, like, pretty good later on. It's just, they need to just give her something she can do early in the game. I don't know. Maybe make her, like, tumble, do more base damage. I'm not really sure, but she's pretty bad in a non-tank meta. It's actually a pretty good buff to Vi. I mean, she has a very high impact ult. It's basically point-click dead on ganks most of the time, and that's lowering that by 20 seconds is really, really good. So, you know, this might be the time for Vi to come out and shine. So we'll see. I mean, she's kind of like... I'll have to see. I'll have to look at runes and sort of figure out what would be the best on her. I think she just doesn't have amazing runes. Obviously, Trinity's going to be really good on her. That's a very low play rate. Obviously a nice win rate, but very low play rate. So I guess a lot of people are doing Electrocute. I'm just wondering if something like Aftershock would be viable, or if that would just be stupid to where you go in and you get some survivability so that you don't die immediately. This is when, like, the last time Vi was really strong in a meta was when it was a Vi Hekra meta and there was a rune. This was like in the winter of 2016, I think. Not a rune, a mastery or whatever back then. I forgot what it was called. But it basically did kind of what Aftershock does now. Whenever you go in, it gives you like a ton of resistances whenever you CC somebody. Yeah, I'm blanking out on what the name of that was. But the numbers on that are probably... I don't know if it's strong enough. I mean, obviously a lot of people aren't doing it. Okay, there's a couple people doing Aftershock. So, it's mostly just this guy, Yoda. Like, the problem is this fourth tree is really bad on a lot of people that otherwise might like Aftershock. Bone Plating and Chrysalis are obviously super strong. And then Aftershock can be really good in certain circumstances, but this last one is just so bad. Like, the Tenacity one is okay. The Health one has a lot of potential, but they need to lower it from 8 monsters to 6 monsters. And I think that would make it a lot more viable. Sudden Impact Ravenous Hunter. Because this would allow you to go in, still do damage with your Trinity, and then also have some survivability with the Aftershock. But I guess a lot of people just go Electrocute and just go YOLO. They're just like, alright, I'm just going Aftershock. Or not Aftershock, I'm just going Electrocute, go for the kill, and then just hopefully I live. Pretty much. Just the best defense is a good offense type of strategy. So we'll see. I mean, we might see her come back into play. She is very reliable. It's just point, click, boom, they're dead. If they don't have... But, you know, in pro play and things like that, like Stopwatch... can shut that down. And there's some other thing like Tom Kench can shut it down. Morgana's Shield can shut it down. So there's a decent chunk of counterplay to her R. I think you can Stopwatch. You may not be able to Stopwatch. Let me see how it's worded. If it stops you from moving or if you're stunned when she locks onto you. Well, no, it's not going to tell us. I think I've seen somebody Zonya's it before. I'm almost positive I have. So I think that Stopwatch does work. So yeah, I mean, I think that's really strong. So we'll see. We'll see how she does with it. Gravity field, whatever. Like this doesn't solve his problem. His items are just too expensive. His little augments or upgrades or whatever are just too expensive. They need to lower the cost on those. I mean, I know that's how they nerfed him back in the day to bring him into line, so he wasn't too powerful. But I think the meta's changed a lot in like the 3 years since he's been viable in the mid lane. So I think it'd be okay to explore lowering the cost of his augments by a couple hundred gold. Mundo probably doesn't matter. This is going to hurt his early game a little bit. So when you spam your cleavers to last hit minions, you are going to still take a little bit of damage. So that's fair. He's just such a beast late game. Having a worse early game seems fine. Now Rakan, this Q's not going to matter at all. I think a lot of times, like slightly longer cooldown of the laning phase. Most people aren't maxing this. Some people get like maybe 3 points of this in lane. That's not going to matter. This does matter, the 10 seconds. Now, I was really hoping they wouldn't do this to Rakan, that they would nerf something else about him, because like that's the really cool thing about him is his R. But his R is one of the most powerful like ults in the game. So certainly from the support roles, it's just such guaranteed engage, like just R plus W. That I don't know, losing 10 seconds on it might feel pretty bad. So we'll see. We'll see how it goes. He has a pretty terrible laning phase. It's okay. Like, if you land your W, like, in an all-in lane, you definitely can get some kills. But he's still a beast later on. He has so much mobility, so much engage range, playmaking potential, safety. I still think he's going to be a top-tier support, even with this change. So, it might, you know, allow some others to kind of hang out sort of near the top with him, but I think that he's still going to be really strong. I don't understand the Sejuani nerf at all. Like, I haven't really seen her that much in pro play. Maybe, like, recently people started to play her a little bit more, but, I mean, I don't know why they're nerfing her again. It feels like she's in an okay spot right now. The Twilight Assault. Doesn't slow as much at level 1. I'm not entirely sure. I mean, obviously this is for the pro scene. Like, Shen support is not super oppressive as a, it's just like a solo queue pick. It's primarily picked with funnel comps, and they're already nerfing funnel comps a lot, as we'll see here in a second. But, I mean, okay, whatever. I guess that's, I don't think they need to nerf Shen, but I guess that's fine. So now he doesn't slow as much, so he can't, like, level 2 kill you as easily. If he, like, flash taunts and Qs you, you know, you're not going to be slowed as much, I guess. I mean, he maxes his Q first. Pretty sure. He might max his E as support. I have to see. I'm pretty sure he maxes Q, though. Pretty sure he maxes Q and then E. So that means that this will only matter in the very early game. So, fine. I don't think it's going to affect his overall power ranking that much. Swain does less damage off of his ult. This is probably fine. His ult does a ton of damage, like, if it's fully charged and blows up on you. And he's already strong with the rest of his kit. Like, he still has a lot of CC, a lot of sustain, pretty good sustained damage as well. So he has good sustained healing and sustained damage with, like, his Q spam. So it seems like a fine nerf. I think he needed something nerfed. I think he's still too strong. So this is probably okay. Talon, now I don't know what it means by incoming damage. I'd have to look at his kit. So is this saying that it's only affecting... Wait, we saw... What? What's going on? Okay. I thought I saw somebody moving when Vi ulted them. I know that, yeah, people can flash after Vi ults them and she chases them with the flash. So that means they could stopwatch. So it just locks on. It doesn't stop them from moving, I think. Look at Talon. Okay, well, looks like it doesn't want to doesn't want to work right now. But whatever, any sort of damage lowering to Talon is good. I'm not sure if it's enough. Like his ratios are still extremely high, especially on his passive and his ult. I think he'll still be really, really strong. And this is only nerfing 40 damage later on off a part of his combo. It's still the same damage early on. This is what he maxes first, I believe. This is wave clear. It says the return damage. Okay, so this is only like half of the damage also. So like his outgoing damage is still the same. It's just the return damage is less. Nerf him more. Like he's too strong. So I mean, as long as he can still one-shot people, which I think he's going to be able to do with Duskblade, he's still going to be really ridiculously strong. So I think that's probably going to be the case. Nimbus Strike. Now I'm pretty sure you max Q first as Wukong. So this is not going to matter, like the early damage is not going to matter a lot until later in the game. You'll deal 40 less damage on your combo, which definitely matters, but you already do so much damage as Wukong. I think just slapping him on the wrist a little bit is fine. He's so strong late game. This should be fine. It won't affect his early game. It'll just affect his late game when his initial person that he engages on. Alright, Zoe, this is not enough of a nerf on Zoe, I don't think. I mean, she maxes her Q first, so once again, this is not really going to matter that much until she gets to, like, level, 13 or so. But yeah, I mean, losing 60 damage. Now, that is a lot late game. Let's be honest, that is a lot. It's 10% ability power, but, like, by that point, she's still going to completely delete you with a Q, I think. So, does she even need the W to kill you? I don't know. Like, so my thought process is this is still going to be really strong in the kind of early to mid-game, when she has, like, one item. It's still going to be pretty good. And then late game, her Q's going to have enough damage to carry her. So, I don't think it's enough. I mean, maybe, but I feel like she does so much damage, she still one-shots you late game, especially if she hits you with a bubble. So, and this, like, the most annoying thing about this is the fact that she can pick up, like, crazy game-breaking items and summoners. Like, if she picks up an Ignite or a Redemption proc or whatever, it can completely flip a lane around, and it hasn't touched this or the cooldown on it. She can just pick up all these different summoners in team fights and just spam them. Or the fact that she gets, like, whatever it is, 70% movement speed for 3 seconds. And this interaction with Hex Flash, so she can just Hex Flash and get, like, crazy movement speed whenever she wants on a low cooldown. There's just so many things that are wrong with this ability. I mean, this is nice that they're touching it. This is the thing that's the problem, but... I mean, we'll see. I just don't think it's enough. But it is a pretty hefty nerf to damage later on. So... Maybe it will be enough. Maybe it will. We'll see. Yeah, I think a lot of people really don't like this champion, unless you're like a Zoe main. She just feels really oppressive. And the fact that, like, the big part of it is she can just, like, spam all of these abilities, several of them, like Q, E, that are, basically one-shots if she hits you with either one of those late game. And just... everything that W does. So they are nerfing the W, but we'll see. Okay, now this is interesting. So they are taking like a super hardline approach on this. They're just basically saying straight up, no more funneling, no more smite middle, no. Which I think that they had to do this from a PR perspective. This got so much hate from everybody, this funnel comp. So many people hate this. I really think that it wasn't that impactful. I mean, it is. There's diversity. It does work, but I thought it was kind of cool that there was a lot of tactical diversity and different, like, alternative picks and things like that that were viable, right? So if you saw, like, Xayah Rakan, it's like you don't know if it's going bot lane or mid lane or what. In the professional scene, I thought that it added a lot more creativity to the draft and the strategic level of pro play. So I'm kind of sad to see that left, but so much of the community just reacted so negatively to this strategy that they had to do it from a public relations standpoint. And of course, all the Caps YouTuber, the all Caps YouTubers and all these people were just out in droves every day about funnel, 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 even though it didn't really have a high win rate for most teams in professional play. Yeah, there's like G2 who did really well with it, and there's a couple other teams that did okay with it, but most teams that tried this failed, so I would have liked to have seen a slightly more elegant approach to this. And they said they're going to be pursuing a cleaner system later on. They're just basically saying, no, you can't do it right now. So pretty much what they're doing is, if you have the most individual gold on your team, then lane minions grant you 10 less gold if you have this item. Which basically means it's like over half less gold. Because a lot of lane minions give you like 14 gold. I think the melees are 14. And the range are like 21 or something like that. So they're going to be giving you like 4 gold. So basically, it just crushes the gold efficiency of trying to run this strategy. Now, what I said they should do is, I said if you had Smite, then you should get 50% experience. So that you'd be down in levels, but you could still get gold if you wanted to. Or I said you could cut the gold by 50% for lane minions, but they decided to go with this, which is cut the gold by a lot. Like 70% or something. Then they say the penalties are removed once you complete an enchantment, which is like the tier 3 jungle item. So you get the saber, and then you get the enchantment. So basically, if you're a jungler, you always get that enchantment first, pretty much. So if you're a jungler that wants to split push for whatever reason later on, if you're playing like a Master Yi or something, you want to go farm some lane minions, at 25 minutes into the game, when Baron's not up, or when it's not a threat for Baron, don't go jungling bot lane, or don't go bot lane if you're the jungler and Baron is up to clear lane minions. But they're saying, okay, you can still do that. So they're trying not to hurt sort of these like hard farm junglers later on in the game. So I think this is a relatively clean way to do it. It's really, really draconian. Like, you can't do it. This will also, not only funnel comps, this will also fix kind of the smite mid phenomenon, which I'm really glad they're fixing this, because I'm getting so tired of amateurs in my game trying to do this and just failing super hard because they saw like an all caps video from like Mid Beast or something that's telling people to do this. And I love Mid Beast. And like, this stuff does work at a top level, but it just really, really doesn't work with like gold players or silver players or even platinum players trying the smite middle Talon stuff. It's like, dude, just take Ignite. You're not going to have enough macro. But this is going to make that completely out the window as well. So I like that. So 2 birds with 1 stone. Good. I like it. So once again, I don't think it was entirely necessary to completely destroy funnel comps. I thought they were interesting, but there was such outcry and people were just freaking out so much about it that they just kind of had to pull the trigger on that, I think, just from a public relations perspective. Okay, mid-patch, Stormrazor. I guess this is a buff to Stormrazor, so, I mean, whatever. That's fine. Brawler's Gloves. Okay, so you can get the gloves cheaper, but the Zeal is still super expensive. Still don't like it. I still wish they'd change it, make Zeal 1100 again, and then make all the items cheaper and just lower the crit damage. Teleport. Now, this could be a pretty big meta shift. I'm going to have to reflect on this a bit more and think about it when I do the tier lists. But 60 extra seconds on teleport is really big. This might make people want to take this less in the bot lane. I think that teleport for bot laners is pretty bad most of the time, with the exception of like Ezreal or maybe a couple others. It's just like there's no way they're going to fight early. But I see people taking this on like Misfortune or Lucian. I'm like, those champions are very strong early. Like, you need to fight. You need heal, early on. So, I mean, we'll see how this pans out. But I do think, top laners are going to get hurt the most by this, because almost all top laners take teleport, or should take teleport. Champions that have a really good non-teleport option might really enjoy this. So a champion like Darius, who may want to take Ghost top lane, could do this. Now, that's going to make it a lot worse for, macro pressure, but, because you won't have a teleport late game, but that Ghost is so strong for getting kills early, and it's very good for team fighting. You know, if you go into a team fight with Ghost a lot of times as Darius and just start cleaning people up, like that can be very, very strong. So other early lane picks that might want to be really aggressive, maybe like a Trendamere or something, just because Trendamere doesn't ever want to show up to a team fight anyways. He's just going to split push the whole game. So we might see like a return to the hard split early pressure with Ignite top lane on some types of champs who both have heavy kill pressure early and who also split really hard. So that could be a Trendamere. Maybe a Camille. I mean, I think that teleport on Camille is still probably really strong because Camille would like to teleport to fights. She can be useful. But she can also get some kills, especially once she pops level 6 if she has Ignite top lane. So, or like a Renekton or something maybe. I don't know. It'll be interesting. It certainly does make Ignite look a bit more appealing in the top lane. It might also make like Summoner Spellbook more appealing, so you could take Ignite in the top lane and then just use your teleport with Summoner Spellbook. I don't know. Or this also helps champions that have a really fast way to get back to lane that don't have to use Ignite. So something like Camille, again, can like hook shot her way back to lane and save a lot of time that way. Or just other champs that can like just use abilities to get back to lane really quickly. So I don't know. We'll see. This is one of the more like potentially meta-changing, interesting adjustments top lane. Another one that's pretty interesting is Conqueror. So I'm really surprised that this is how they did it. I wish they would have taken the 20% true damage down to 15% true damage on it. I think that would have been better so that it didn't completely just dumpster tanks. But they've decided to opt for a weaker early game with it. So tanks really can't capitalize on a weaker early game. You know, if a tank's facing a Darius, like, you know, Maokai versus Darius top lane, the Maokai's not going to be able to say, oh, he does 4 less AD at level 1, so I can all-in trade him now. I mean, it makes Assassins better, or like really high damage early game champs better against Conqueror users, but they're already going to be kind of decent against Conqueror users because Conqueror is primarily used for tanks, so I don't know. This is a buff to press the attack users, people who can use press the attack. So who could do Conquer but can also do press the attacks. This is another Camille buff potentially because she really likes to go press the attack, I think. Someone like Renekton can also do press the attack pretty easily. So anyone that can use PTA instead of Conquer, this would help. So like it's not like earth shattering, but losing 4 AD early on in these trades is a big deal, sort of. I mean, it's like 140 gold worth of value in AD, so it's not enough. It's not enough. I mean, I know his Shen's going to lose his mind about this nerf. I think it needs to be nerfed more. I think that Conqueror is just too strong. I know people hate tanks, but this is just like too much hate on tanks, I think, still. So I would have changed the true damage to from 20 to 15 instead of touching the AD. But whatever. It's a slight nerf. I'll take it. This incidentally does nerf Draven a little bit bot lane too, and I think he's a bit over the top as well, so that's decent. Okay, Ghost Poro, this item's garbage. I tried it out on the PBE during a dodge during the week, and like the big problem is its vision range is terrible. It only has like 450 vision range, which is like half of a normal ward. So like you can't even see like anywhere around you. It's almost more of a liability than a help because it feels like you have vision of an area, but you really don't. So like it allows them, like it puts gaps in your vision to where you feel like you have strong vision of an area if you have the Ghost Poro, but then they can just sneak by it on this little like, you know, pixel of a shadow that your ward doesn't cover. And so it actually can be a liability. So yeah, it's terrible. It's really bad. I mean, your ability to get a little bit of extra AP, that seems like a pretty good value late game. I mean, that's nice, like 20 extra ability power. It's a good bargain. That's like 400 something gold, like 420 gold or so. But I was very, very dissatisfied using this. And the zombie ward, this is a terrible change for Zombie Ward. Like, I kind of understand why they're changing it, sort of, but it feels really, really bad. I've tried this too. Like, your own wards don't zombie anymore, and that is really rough, because, like, one of the main reasons that I like Zombie Ward earlier, especially after the trinket changes and the warding changes, is you can actually have a ward that stays up for a reasonable amount of time until you get your upgraded coin item or whatever relic item, whatever you want to get. Until you get your big wards, this gives you more time on your normal wards. So it turns those 90-second wards into like 2-minute wards, which is a very big deal early on to help you prevent ganks. So, and like, you can zombie, like, you could zombie your own wards even later on into the game and then drop new wards, and you could have a total of like 6 wards up, for like 30-second windows or so. So I think the Zombie Ward wasn't abused. Like, hardly anybody used Zombie Ward to begin with, and if you're using it properly, it actually took quite a bit of planning so that you could get those maximum amount of wards on the map. And like this, who cares? Like, you destroy a ward, and then you get an extra 30 to 90 magic damage when you attack. I mean, that doesn't even make any sense. Like, one is trying to achieve like a vision game, and then another one is like trying to find like burst damage. What? Like, who cares? If I'm Lulu and I kill something and get a zombie ward, I can go up and auto attack and do a little bit of extra burst damage. Like, this would primarily only be useful like really in the laning phase, and you're not going to consistently be able to find their wards and kill them. I mean, I guess you could, like, if you took a sweeper early, I guess you could try a strategy of sweep it, get a zombie, go back to lane, and do that extra 40 on hit damage. I mean, I guess that's a thing. I don't know how long it lasts, if it's like permanent or if it's like lasts for 10 seconds or something. I have no idea. I mean, I guess you could try something where it was like early game, just sweep and then trade onto them. But still, your sweeper's going to be on cooldown for a long time early. It's just not consistent enough with the damage. It just seems very random. It's like, why? It would be nice if they gave you some, like, you get extra experience, or you got a little bit of extra gold if you killed something and zombied it. That would be nice. So, if instead of getting 30 gold when you kill a ward, it would give you, 45 gold if you killed a ward or something like that. That would actually be quite nice. Or if it, that might be overpowered, but if it gave you a ward, so if instead of, like, whenever it zombied, it just gave you like a standard ward that you could drop or whatever, at some point. I don't know. I just feel like there are other ways they could design this to double down on the vision game. Like, if you're doing well, if you're finding their wards, you're getting the zombie ward, and then if they want to give you something extra, it should be something vision related. Like, refreshes the duration on your wards, or refreshes the duration on your zombie wards that you have out every time you add a new zombie ward, or, whatever. Gives you extra gold, gives you extra experience, just something like that would be very helpful. But as it is, I'm probably not going to get this again. It just sucks. It feels really, really bad, which I don't like, because I love getting Ingenious Hunter. I think Ingenious Hunter is awesome. I've talked about that a lot on the channel. It just synergizes so well with Locket Redemption and your Sweeper. It's great. But I just don't know. I mean, I guess I could get maybe like Bone Collection or whatever, Eyeball Collection, Eyeball Collector to deal with, to be able to get the Ingenious. But I don't know. I'm probably not going to do Zombie anymore. But it makes me sad because I really like this ward. I thought it has a lot of potential, but this sucks. Cursor update. I'm probably not going to do it. I'm probably going to stick with the classic cursor. I'm just used to seeing it, but it's an interesting change. Champ select, you can not ban and not get a dodge. It's not going to matter that much, probably. It's kind of annoying that people can just like AFK after they pick their champion. I mean, I guess you have to pick your ban first, but anyways, okay, that's it. We'll keep it at about an hour here. So the big changes, I think Conqueror seems like it could, I don't think it's enough to really push people super over the top, but it's a good little buff for like PTA users. I think early game, the takeaway here is early game champions that can pressure are going to be stronger because of the teleport changes and the Conqueror changes to an extent. So if you can use Ignite top lane efficiently, like people who kind of have to take teleport but don't really want to take teleport, champions that have a lot of pressure early might be able to take Ignite instead. I think that's interesting to mix it up. That's going to make it a lot less appealing for bot laners to take teleport also, and maybe mid laners. So mid laners who want to be able to take Ignite and be aggressive early on potentially can do that a little bit more now instead of having to take teleport every time. I think that's helpful. Same thing with Smite. So like people aren't going to be taking Smite in the mid or Smite in the bot lane as much anymore, and so this is going to make people who can be very aggressive and get those kills with Ignite early on a little bit stronger. Yeah, I don't think this is going to change the meta on these champs that much. Zoe might get knocked down or Peg. It's hard for me to say this. Like I said, I don't think it's enough, but it is big numbers. It is big numbers, so we'll see. Talon is still going to be really strong. Wukong's still going to be really strong. Not going to matter. Shen, I don't even know why they did that, but that's random. Swain, still going to be strong. Rakan will be strong. Sejuani is kind of random. Still be middling, I guess. Should be okay. Mundo still probably be good. Vi could be someone to keep an eye on. She could be really strong in solo queue after this. We'll see, especially if people can find a really good build on her. I mean, I think it's still like Trinity Sterix. I just don't know about the rune. I guess it's Electrocute, but I feel like maybe there should be an Aftershock build in there somewhere. Sivir's interesting. The changes to teleport might make Unsealed Spellbook more appealing so that people can grab that teleport every now and then for those key moments late game. So you don't have it early. You can take Ignite early, but then later on you'll be able to get the teleport if you need it. So like, I don't know. I'd have to think about it, but I'm just like imagining if there's a champion that could like take Ignite early and that could switch early on if they needed to. They could get teleport early to go back to lane if they have a bad lane, or they can switch over and go for something else to go for a kill again. So they could go for like a ghost and try to kill somebody again, or they could go for like barrier or heal or something like that and try to force an all-in. And then later on in the game, they could go for teleport if they really wanted it. So I feel like there might be a place for Summoner Spellbook now to be able to access that teleport on certain champions. But you'd have to give up a lot in the laning phase. Like, you'd have to give up either Press the Attack or Conquer. So I don't know if that would work or not. It'd be interesting. I think it makes like Unsealed Spellbook a little more interesting on certain kinds of champs, potentially. Maybe like a Twisted Fate. I don't know. I'll have to think about that. I feel like the Unsealed Spellbooks, it has to be good in some situations. It's just so versatile, but other stuff is crowding it out. But maybe like with the nerf to teleport, maybe that helps. Uncrowd. The Sivir buff is interesting. I think Sivir's borderline viable right now, so if she gets Essence Reaver early, I think that maybe that could work. But yeah, so pretty decent changes overall. I like the direction they're going with stuff. I'm surprised they didn't touch like Heimerdinger. There's been a lot of outcry about the Dinger lately. I'm kind of glad they left him alone though for now and just kind of let it play out for a patch and see sort of what happened. But I think there are still some outliers that are strong, but they did address a lot of stuff. They addressed Smite mid, they addressed funnel comps, they tried to give the 80 carries a little love, a little nudge to help them out. It will help some of them, for sure, especially Twitch. And they did attack some of the most overpowered, egregious champions, at least a little bit, right? Like, they touched Aatrox, they touched Talon, they touched Zoe. Is it enough on these champions? I don't know, we'll see. But they definitely have their eye on him and moved him a little bit. So I think overall, very successful patch in terms of intent. We'll just see how it actually plays out. So thank you very much. Don't forget, if you like the content, be sure to like and subscribe. And I'll see you next time. Have a good day.